Hey there, your friend Susan here. I hope you're having an awesome day. Today, we're going to talk about climbing the mountain of getting your product to the market. And seriously, this is not an easy road. We're talking about going from the iteration stage of whatever it is you want to sell, a beauty product, a wellness product, and then sourcing and figuring out packaging and branding, and then you have to invest money and then getting that out and raising funds. It's tough. And if you've been listening to the show for a while, you may have heard Jen Pelka, the founder of Infem Wines, on, and she talks about doing that with the champagne business and getting her first clients, including Delta Airlines, Neiman Marcus. What that one was a challenge, and she's on fire. I'm a private investor in that company, and my guest today came out of 25 years at Target and then went into private consulting before she started her current business. And it's amazing. So we get very raw and real as usual. And before we jump into today's show, her company, Womaness, is offering a 20% discount with the code TPT20. So if you go check out womanness.com, these products are for women in perimenopause and menopause. And they're also available on Amazon, but you won't get the 20% discount. So use the code TPT20 and you can share it with your friends who you love, the great women in your life, and hopefully that they will love the products as much as you're going to love the founder's story. And additionally, the thing I will say is that sleep is one of the top things every entrepreneur needs. And I cannot emphasize enough how challenging it is to get a good night's sleep. And one of the secrets for me is using sleep spray from Isagenix. And I'm about to take a trip to Mallorca, Spain. I'm going to be training some amazing entrepreneurs, which is what I did for years. And as an aside, if your company is looking for a transformational training, I have been doing this for decades for close friends only. And if you're interested in that, you can go to susansly.com and check it out. But I'm leaving for Mallorca. And, I pride myself, I don't get jet lag, but I always travel with sleep spray. It is truly a game changer. So you can go to susansly.com, go on Trusted Partners, drop down at the bottom, and click on the Isagenix tab, and then you can go and look for the sleep spray. And I hope you will love it as much as I do. Well, let's get into today's show. My guest is the CEO and founder of Womaness, Sally Mueller. And as I mentioned, Sally was at Target for 25 years, and she was instrumental in helping to develop that customer experience in different areas of the store. So you think about women's fashion and then maternity, and then building those collaborations with very famous designers, Isaac Mizrahi and Liz Lang and so forth. And after 25 years, she was going through perimenopause and said, hey, I want to make a change. And she steps into the world of consulting. And from there, she ends up going and starting her current company. And she is literally on fire. And we're going to talk about the pains of fundraising, how many VCs she had to pitch to find a lead VC during the pandemic, and how she manages her emotional state to be the CEO that she needs to be. So, with that, let's jump into this episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship with my good friend, Sally Mueller, the CEO and founder of Womaness. This is Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that brings the no-nonsense truth of what is required to start, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Susan Sly. Sally, oh my gosh, I have not seen you since we did the FemTech event. And it is so amazing to have you on the show because I felt like at that event, there were so many things I wanted to ask you. And I reached out to our mutual friend, Azine. I'm like, I need to connect with Sally because there's so many things. And now we get to do that in front of everyone. So welcome to the show.
Right. Thanks, Susan. I know I loved meeting you, and that was such an inspiring event. I'm so glad that I made the trip to Arizona, and it was just really, really impressive to see everyone that spoke, and the people that attended and all the innovation that is happening in women's health in, the Phoenix, the Arizona area alone. So congrats. You've really been a change maker in the industry, but also in that area.
Well, thank you. And we did that event for the listeners. That was in the fall of 2024. And we're in a very different climate for women-led businesses now. A lot has changed. And Sally and I have a lot to talk about. So Sally, so in my research, quote unquote research, the air quotes, if you're not watching on YouTube, I'm doing the air quotes. One of the things that I'm always pulling entrepreneurs, and this will be part of my next book when is just this discussion around, are entrepreneurs born or made? And so here you are, you're a founder and CEO, and you came from a 25-year career at Target. But the burning question I have for you is, did you have a business as a child?
So funny you ask. I essentially did. I was really in a partnership with my mom, who was a
Awesome.
teacher, and she was always into beauty and loved cosmetics. And she decided to get into the beauty business. And she started opening her own Merle Norman cosmetic studios. It's a brand that started in the 30s,
Mhm.
great quality makeup. They just lost their way from a marketing standpoint. But my mom opened these shops, and I grew up in the Twin Cities, and she had four at the height of her career. And she was in this business for 45 years. So I started in junior high working for her all the way through high school, college. Obviously, I moved on at that point to other professions. But that job taught me so much about women and making women feel good and helping women just feel like boost their self-esteem too, because we did makeovers. So they'd come into the shop, maybe with no makeup on, and we transformed their their whole look. Not from a hair perspective, but from a cosmetic perspective. And so many women were so excited when they left. Some of them would cry. So I feel like this Womaness is kind of full circle from that moment,
Mhm.
because it was making women feel good. And it was not just beauty on the surface. It was like the self-esteem and the confidence, and just celebrating women. So yeah, that taught me a lot.
I was thinking that as you were sharing about coming full circle, and not much has changed in terms of what we as women are craving,
Hmm.
and craving at different ages and stages for perhaps very different reasons. And I think we're seeing this beautiful evolution of women in terms of why we want to look good. And
Yeah,
it's for ourselves, really, which is
right.
phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And I think about what you're doing now, and we're gonna dive into that in a few minutes. But the question I want to ask you is, as a woman, when did you first feel beautiful?
Well, that's a really good question. I think I mean, I was always around beauty. My mom was always, you know, making me clothes. Like, this is way back when women would sew.
Mhm.
Like, women would sew their own clothes, and they would make clothes. My mom made clothes for me. So I was always, you know, at least that part of beauty was always like covered. She was always very interested in me looking presentable and
Mhm.
cute and girly and blah, blah, blah. Um, but I feel like beauty is emerged later in life for me, because beauty is so much more than that. It's really feeling strong. It's feeling obviously more confident. And so I think as I've gone through midlife is when I felt like now I'm more of the whole package, not just, worried about the cosmetic part of beauty, but really thinking more about beauty from a strength perspective.
I love that you said that about the whole package, right?
Right. Yeah.
When you were talking about the Merle Norman cosmetics
Yeah.
stores. So my stepmother had she sold the Alouette cosmetics, right? So
Okay.
when I was growing up, I would go with her to those home parties.
Mhm.
And when I wrote the book, The Have It All Woman, back in, oh gosh, when did I write that? Like '07 or something. The I was this kid, I was really overweight, and I got bullied at school. I got beaten up at school. So I never felt attractive. And I
Mhm.
would go with her to these home presentations, and there were all these women there. And I remember one woman looking at me, and she took my face in her hands and she just said, "You are so beautiful."
Oh,
And it was the very first time that I
yeah.
was like, oh, okay. Because I used to think of myself like, the ugly duckling,
Yeah.
essentially, right? And thinking about that, and thinking even today, as founders, as CEOs,
Mhm.
that definition of beauty, the whole package, the
Yeah.
brains, the brawn,
Right.
the
Right.
power, all of it, all of it. So yeah, I want to talk about Target. So Brian Cornell, in my, for many years, I was in the AI space in retail.
Yeah.
So I've seen
Yeah.
Brian speak on numerous occasions. I've
Mhm.
watched him grow that company.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of phenomenal things about the company, and some things people don't know. For instance, some of the frontline staff, the cashiers, have been there for 20, 30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And the investment in employees. How did
Mhm.
you come to work at Target?
Well, again, retail was always in my blood from growing up with my mom and her business. And I graduated from college with a marketing degree and business major from University of Wisconsin. And Target would come there and recruit. And at the time, I had my sights on like working in the ad world. I'm going to go to Chicago, work for an ad agency. And I set up my own interview track with those agencies, and they all told me, if Target offers you a job, take it. Are you kidding? So I did. And I mean, fast forward, they offered me the job and I loved it. I mean, when I joined Target right out of college, they had 170 stores. Can you believe it? I mean, and now what do they have? 1,900 or almost 2,000. So it's just changed so much. And just being what it taught me and what I loved about it is not only working with great people, but it was really understanding the consumer and how the consumer shifts were happening, or going to impact our business. So it wasn't, you know, there were like tactical trends, like I was in girls' fashion. Oh, well, denim skirts one day were the hottest item and they died. They would just die a fast death. And I love that, like that challenge of like, when is that particular product trend going to peak and die and something else is going to emerge? But I also loved the consumer insight part of the role. And as I got into marketing at Target, I had a much bigger area of responsibility, and I was like 30,000 feet versus like one department. So I could see like all these shifts happening. My days would be so interesting because I was like overseeing mom and baby, and the whole pregnancy life cycle and how expectant moms, really look to Target and trust Target. How do we market to them? And then another meeting I'd go to would be like women's fashion and how do we like, build our credibility in fashion. And then the next meeting would be like young men. How do we get young men into the store? So it was so dynamic being in that environment. And so 25 years, I had so many different roles. It feels like 6 different companies that I worked for, to be honest. I mean, it was so that entrepreneurial spirit, yes, I grew up with, but I found myself being more of an entrepreneur inside a corporate setting.
Mm.
And I think earned a reputation for being, a change maker, a trend, like trend forecaster. So even though I didn't have that in my title per se, that was a big part of my role.
Well, thinking about Target, And for the global audience who's never been to one, so
Mhm.
as Sally's sharing, they're not only different departments, so for different
Mhm.
parts of a person's life cycle, there are stores within stores. So I'm
Mhm.
going to tell a Target story, then I'm going to tee you up, sister, to tell a Target story.
Okay.
So one of my favorite areas of Target is the Magnolia Home area. So
Yeah,
that
that's great.
initial Target partnership with Chip and Joanna Gaines for Magnolia and creating in the middle of a store almost like this store within a store, like a
Yeah, yeah,
sanctuary.
yeah.
And when that initially happened, there were a lot of people who questioned it. And there was also this whole, brick and mortar's dying. Everyone's just going to buy
Right.
online. And they were wrong about that because
Mhm.
that didn't happen.
Right.
And one of the stories that I heard Brian tell was about doing that deal and
Mhm.
about being bold and courageous and saying, yeah, I'm gonna put my stake in the ground
Yeah.
and say, yes, this is going to work. And it's so deliberately placed right in the middle of the store. And it's a
Right.
different shopper that was coming to Target to go
Right.
to the Magnolia area.
Yeah.
And I thought that was genius, thinking about
Yeah.
how do we get different shoppers into the store,
Mhm.
maybe coming from different demographics.
Right.
And so that's one story I think about. And I even think about in my own company, it's that, how do we attract different types of people within a large cohort to want to
Right.
come into our digital playground, so to speak. Okay, so now I want to hear one of your target stories.
Oh, Susan, I have so many. Um, I think, one of my favorite stories is just creating in partnership with, my team and the lead merchant, Trish, that I'm still very close to. We worked on this the whole designer program. Isaac Mizrahi, Proenza Schooler, Liz Lang, all of these designers. And we did set out to partner with so many. I mean, in the end, I think I signed on like 75, but it was an evolution. It was like, now we're going to tackle XYZ, or, we need newness in this category, so we needed to reinvent maternity. So we brought in Liz Lang, who was at the time really the queen of maternity. And so I learned so much from that experience on working with external design talent, and do you how do you respect, I mean, it's so important to respect their brand. What are they bringing to the table? Get the best out of what they're bringing, uh, and kind of put it through the Target filter, because that's what they wanted. They wanted, to kind of arrive on a national level at Target. So it was so fun to work with such creative people. And, sometimes they made us rework our advertising, several times, but they were always right, and they always made it better. And so, yeah, my role was really the kind of the leader of that whole initiative. So I learned a lot, and it was so successful.
And Target was the vanguard for that because other
Yeah, yeah,
companies like H&M,
right.
is off the top of my head, came in and did the designer collabs.
Yeah,
And there were some crazy sellouts, like
yeah,
literally, made
very crazy.
national news. Can you think of one specifically?
Well, Missoni was sold out in, I think, 12 minutes. We also did a partnership with Liberty of London, which wasn't a person, right? It's a store, beautiful, iconic store in London, known for their print and pattern. And we put it on bikes. We put it on, you know, kids' clothes, men's ties, boxers, women's dresses, melamine plates. I mean, we did, it was amazing. I still have so much of it in my home. And that did extremely well. It was so optimistic and so beautiful that I think it just struck a chord with women. And I think retail needs that now. Like, it's we're in a tough environment, right? And people are looking for escapism. They're looking for, you know, different kinds of content and brands and experiences to uplift them too. So I hope that retail continues to surprise and delight us.
Absolutely. I love that you said, Sally, escapism. Because the when I think about brand and I think about an interaction with a brand, what is it ultimately at the end of the day we're looking at, right? We can go and pitch VCs. What is the problem you're solving, and
Yeah,
why? What's the TAM in that problem, and all of those things. But at the end of the day, why is that customer going to engage with the brand?
right.
And we're offering them something that in almost, I'm going to say 99% of the cases, yes, it might solve a short-term issue, but there's something
Mhm.
aspirational to it. And I'll share
Yeah,
another story from
good.
my past life. So there was a very large convenience store chain on the East Coast, and they sell pizza at their many locations.
Mhm.
And I was when I was co-CEO, co-founder of my former company, Radius, our sector was computer vision fuel sector. So I would go tour these convenience stores. I'd get to ask questions. I'd be so interested, Sally, from the retail perspective, like,
Mhm.
why do we put things here? Why is
Right.
this end cap here? What's this doing? Why, why?
Mhm.
I learned so much. So this
Mhm.
one particular retailer, they brought in a Michelin chef to
So
create
smart.
their pizza sauce.
Oh my gosh.
And because one of the things they realized is that everyone needs gas or they need a charge, right? And so, what could they offer? Just like
Mhm.
Target with the mashup with designers, what could they offer to
Mhm.
people who were suburbanites, middle class, that would say, hey, I don't need to go order pizza from this. I can get my fuel and weirdly get my
Yeah.
Michelin star pizza sauce pizza
Yeah.
at the same place. And I want everyone listening, especially if whatever the product is you're selling in your business or a service, is what is that encounter and how can you upscale it even if it's an accessible brand, right? Which I think
Right.
is huge, huge. So Sally,
Mhm.
you 25 years, why make change, right? Like the
Oh, well, I was 45 when I left, and I was probably in perimenopause and didn't really know yet that I was in perimenopause. And what happens is you also start to, I think with your hormones changing, you kind of also start to think about the future. And I don't know, it's hard to pinpoint. I don't know the scientific connection, but I know that, your mood changes too as you go through menopause, right?
Yeah.
Um, Not always for the better, but ultimately you come out of it. But I started really at reassessing where I was at in my life and what is next. And I'm 45. Should I stay or should I do something new and exciting? Now's the time. I felt like I was kind of at the top of my career. And now looking back, 45 is so young because now I'm 60. But at the time, I just felt like there was some urgency to doing something next, And so I decided to take a huge risk and leave my great job at Target and start my own brand consulting business. And in the next 12 years was kind of my second pivot. And that was a really crazy time because I ended up having my own business. Then my client would hire me. Then I go back to owning my own business. Then I would go in house. It's a lot of different change. But at the same time, I had some really huge successes that really set me up for success with Womaness, which is what I call my third pivot. So,
Well, yeah, and the average woman pivots 7 to 8 times. So sister, you're
yeah,
three.
yeah.
And if people can't, if you're not, you all need to go to YouTube because Sally looks like she's 35. She does not, like, there is no way, like you just wouldn't even know it. I mean, I knew, but it was like no.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I love that you said, about sharing your age. I was
Yeah.
46 when I co-founded Radius, and I'd been in CPG for a very long time. And I just, I still love it and I still dream about it. I
Yeah.
think about it. I think about packaging, design ethos,
Right.
product encounter, like all of those things.
Yeah.
For me, I was looking for a challenge, and I had been in perimenopause from the time I was 38. So by
Hmm.
the time I was 46, I was like hugely symptomatic. And I'm like, if there's an opus to my career, what is my opus? And what is
Yeah.
my Mr. Holland's opus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so that was the impetus for that. How did you, in your consulting business, how did you get your first clients? Because to go from there are a lot of nuances, non-competes, you're
I
leaving,
know.
so
I
how did you get
know.
them?
Well, it was all through connections. And that's part of the advice I love to give people is to really work on building your web of connections. Um, so many people want to help you, but you also have to give back to them. So I think it's
Mhm.
throughout the years, it's a lot of give and take, right? Mentor, mentee. And so, yeah, my first clients were through personal relationships. I also believe that you never know who you're going to work for, and you have to always respect every level. If it's the mailroom person, at Target Corporation, or, the ad specialist that was responsible for getting all your samples. And, it's like treat everyone with respect. And that's, it sounds so obvious, but I think that goes a long way. And people, throughout the years, people have come back and said, "Oh, I liked working with you," and it's just like everything comes around, goes around, right? So,
Yeah.
so important to build that reputation. And so, yeah, that's my
How did
advice.
you price your consulting?
Oh my
Like
gosh.
getting into the
Too
weeds.
low, to be honest,
Okay.
Susan. Too low. I didn't, I didn't really have much guidance there. Um, because I was always of the belief like I gotta over deliver,
Mhm.
want them to crave more. But I ended up, I think, giving a lot for what I was paid. But I ended up the first year, I figured it out at the end of that year. I was so proud that I actually made up my salary from Target.
Amazing.
Now, I worked really hard and I literally left Target on a Friday and opened my new business on a Monday, the following Monday.
Yeah.
And I had no clients. So it's not easy. Um, but I also, again, because of all of the relationships I built, I, very quickly had some projects and those led to some, long-term consulting positions. So it was fun.
And do, there are so many people listening who are working corporately. And
Yeah.
even the day Sally and I are doing the show, there's some new data that came out about Gen Z and entry level jobs depleting, especially in technology because of AI being able to
Yeah.
write code and so on and so forth. And so a lot of people listen to the show who are working in something and saying, well, I want to take that leap. So I want to ask
Mhm.
you the next question about this. So you're there, you take this leap, you price it too low,
Yeah.
you're going to your network. How did you create your consulting product?
Um, it was bespoke. So it was
Okay,
like
that's
it
awesome.
was, it was all like either reinventing a brand, building a brand. So I had kind of a process of, are they hiring me? Like I worked with Disney out of
Mhm.
the gate. That was one of my clients because I had experience working with them at Target. And so they wanted to take It's a Small World, which is a ride
Yep.
at Disney, and turn it into a huge brand. And so I put a team together to work on it with me. And that's where the dollars would be really squeezed because
Mhm.
you're creating a huge asset when you think about it. So it should be priced pretty high. And yet they wanted it, more affordable. So my portion got squeezed down, but I felt like I had to have the graphic designer, the thought partner, just the elements. So I was very, my business was all collaborative and I put the right teams together to actually, work on the product, on the, the particular project.
Mm.
Sometimes the scope was beyond strategy, and it was more like, you need to fix our business. I had one client that was in Tesco in the UK. You need
Yeah.
to fix our business over there. You need to save it, working with the merchants. And, so because I had such a varied career at Target, I had a lot of different skills. I was a merchant, I was in marketing, I worked with sourcing, so I could do kind of a lot of different things. And that served me really well in my career.
That's so helpful because the things I'm picking up on are network, network, network.
Yeah,
Every entrepreneur talks
yeah,
about that. Who's in your network,
yeah,
building on your experience, not getting over your skis and saying, well, I'm going to start. The thing I start laughing, Sally, since it's raw and real entrepreneurship, is AI consultants. I'm like,
oh,
have you just deployed AI at scale? No, but I
yeah,
have a TikTok channel. Oh, good for you. That's
right.
fantastic, right?
Yeah,
And
I'm sure you
and
see it all.
I do see it all. And that's if I was doing consulting
Yeah.
personally, that's what I'd be doing because I'm one of the only people in the US who's ever scaled AI for computer vision,
Hmm.
right? In retail.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I love that you're saying. It's like take a moment, step back and go, what am I a badass in?
Yeah,
Right? What do I know how to do? And someone wakes Sally up at 2 in the morning. It's like, do this. She's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
heck yes. I
yeah,
know how
yeah,
to do that 100%. So many women price themselves too low.
yeah,
That
yeah,
is like one of the common epidemics of being a
absolutely.
woman.
Yeah,
So
I
when did you
agree.
realize you had to raise your prices?
Um, I'm still realizing that, Susan.
Yeah.
Um, I think once I figured out, what I was here to do, which was I ended up doing a really fantastic deal with the founders of Who What Wear, Catherine
Mhm.
and Hillary. We formed a partnership and we brought Who What Wear, which was a fantastic digital brand known for fashion and content and influencers and just incredible team. And we brought it to Target. And so that became like a bigger platform for me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it wasn't just like what I started to not like was just like the projects that were like kind of like what Disney hired because you we worked so hard on this beautiful presentation that was so smart. They even said this is unbelievable, but it just sits there and collects dust. And I love to be able to execute my ideas,
Me too. Yeah.
and I think I learned a lot about myself. So Who What Where gave me that opportunity to do the full circle, the from the beginning to the end. And I, because it was a bigger deal, I was starting to obviously make more financial ROI off of it. But yeah, I've still underpriced myself through my whole career. So
So what,
hard. It's so hard.
yeah, it
And
is
maybe it's
so hard.
my, I have not only am I a woman, but I'm in the Midwest, and I'm, you're not, there's so many women under, you're right. They don't maybe stand up for themselves.
The statistics, not only have they not changed, they're actually going the wrong way,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so when you're consulting, you're having some wins,
Yeah.
and then you're getting that little nudge going, it's time to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So where did the idea for Womaness spawn from?
Yeah. So I ended up going in-house with Catherine and Hillary, which is amazing.
Mhm.
Because Catherine wanted to create brands. I wanted to create brands. We thought it would be better to do it together,
Mhm.
because it's hard. It's hard. You need capital. She had a platform with Click, which is the parent company. And so I went in house and it was really fantastic. It was like three years and I had a great team and we created Versed skincare and we worked on some other really fun projects along with expanding Who What Wear to Zalando in Europe and Selfridges and
Mhm.
all these exciting things. But during that process, I'm going through menopause and I started think, what's next for me? I'm kind of now running out of time in my head for doing my own thing.
Mhm.
And I should, everyone was telling me too, like, you should do your own thing. You should do, so you start to kind of listen, to people and their feedback, and you start thinking about your own place and where you're at in your life. And I think for me, then the menopause part of Womaness really came about because of my own personal journey through menopause, and not really knowing what menopause was all about, because this is 6, 7 years ago, no one was talking about it. It was like hush hush. My mom denied she actually went through it. She said, "Oh, Sally, it was nothing. It was so
Yep.
easy." Well, meanwhile, I remember her not finding it very easy.
Mhm.
Um, and I only say that because it's very common. It's a very common part of the story that women, our moms did not educate us about menopause. So that's all changing. But Michelle and I we were friends and we decided to do this together. Again, I'm very collaborative as a person. Growing up at Target makes you collaborative. So I knew I wanted to do it with someone else.
Mhm.
And I'm glad that I did, because it is a huge undertaking, starting a company like this. I mean, there's so many layers to it. And it's not just selling product, it's selling, education, community, hope.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy reaching our demographic. We're very time pressed.
Mhm.
I think it's almost easier to reach a millennial and a Gen Z. I've had experience now with all of these different generations and marketing to them. Um, Women are in our demographic are so time pressed because we're probably top in our game from a career standpoint. We still have children. If we are lucky enough to have children, they're still, involved in our lives, right? Then you
Yeah.
have aging parents. You can have health issues. I went through breast cancer, a
Mhm.
year and a half ago. So, I thank God caught it early, but you're dealing with all these things. So it's hard to break through to women like us, and so it's the biggest challenge I think I've ever had from a professional standpoint. This position, just because it's changing so fast in a good way. There's so much innovation happening in women's health. Um, I've always got that trend curve in my mind, like what's next? Where's this consumer heading? Where's the competition and starting to encroach? Like, you got to be one step ahead. And, um, and then the marketing front, how do you get the attention and build the trust with this woman?
Yes. Yes, and amen.
Yeah, not
And
easy.
it isn't. And even, I in sisterhood collaboration, right? Like my dad died last year, just
Mm,
before the event.
yeah. Oh,
My
I'm
mom passed a
sorry.
few years ago.
Yeah.
I have one child at home, but my oldest one is almost 30.
Yeah.
And I'm running a company, and
Right.
I'm renovating a house, and
Yeah.
I'm traveling and,
And
right?
raising money, and yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
raising money
thinking
is like another job.
it is another full-time job, which we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. And thinking about where are my eyeballs, right?
Right.
And
Right.
not necessarily, and since it's raw and real entrepreneurship. So my youngest daughter, Emery, and she's super nerdy like her mom.
Was she
So
at the
we're
event? I think
no, that was
oh,
the
okay.
older one, the
Okay.
oldest one, Avery.
Yeah.
And so Emery and I are we watched all of Young Sheldon, and now we're watching all of The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Okay.
So there is not one moment my eyes are seeing any ads that are going to be relevant to me in menopause. My
Mm,
magazine reading has gone down. I swipe right to look at just the headlines. I'm CNBC. And then I think about, where do we find those very, very tired, busy eyeballs and get in front
right.
of them?
Right.
And so I want to step back and come back to this question. So, how did you get your initial funding to start the company?
Well, Michelle and I put in our own money, and
Mm,
we're not like sitting on a lot of money, but we decided our husbands really believed in us, supported us. So we just, I remember saying to my husband, I got to pay someone $10,000 for this product development. He's like, okay, just write out the check. It was kind of like, we're in this, we're in. And both of our husbands have their own businesses, so that helps too.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a supportive partner, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do this. I don't
Yeah.
know how you do it. Then our parents started to give us some seed money. So that was cute. And then from there, we did a, pre-revenue fundraise. And what was so crazy, Susan, is guess when we started to fundraise?
When?
March of 2020. March of
Excellent.
2020.
That's awesome.
I know. Just as the pandemic hit, we
Mhm.
were going out with our deck and our fundraise, and it was crazy. I mean, it was because we knew we were launching at Target too in select stores. So we needed inventory by such and such a date. All of that just became a perfect storm. And no one would even kind of give us the time, no investors until May. And then it became like all summer that people started to feel a little more comfortable with being in the pandemic.
Mhm.
Actually, business in supplements was on fire. Do you remember
Yep.
that? I mean,
Mhm.
beauty was doing well, supplements. So I think the VC community started to feel like, well, this is not going to be doomsday. We're going
Yeah.
to get through this. And then we finally got our lead investor in, I want to say late August, September of 2020. And
How
we were launching in, January of 2021. It was so down to the wire.
how many how many investors did you have to talk to get your lead?
Oh my gosh. I have a grid of all of them. I would say probably 40.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay. So
at
Canva
least.
200. So yeah, okay. And it's so interesting, Sally, because in all of the, I think 400 founders that I've interviewed now, it's there, we hear the stories like, oh, I didn't even do a pitch deck and I got a check for $1 million. That's lovely. It's not normal.
Right,
And
right. Yeah,
I had a founder on here a few episodes ago and he was darling and he was so honest. And he's like, I'm an introvert.
yeah.
I had to teach myself how to be a situational extrovert. I did
Oh,
100 pitches and 100. And as we're raising money right now for our lead, and we
yeah,
have several who are like, oh, we're all in, we're follows, I have the emails. That's
yeah,
fantastic. Who is going to lead? And we're in a climate right now where there's a lot of, it's not a pandemic, but there's a lot of economic
yeah,
uncertainty.
yeah,
There's high interest rates. The Dow has dropped, significantly, but when someone's looking at it, it's come back a little bit. But in fact, anytime there's ripples in the water of the economy,
I know.
investors constrict.
Yeah, yeah.
So how did you manage the stress of doing the 40 pitches? Like you and I were talking about before we got in the show, these lows, right? Because the lows as an entrepreneur, the lows are very low, the
Very
highs are
low.
very high. How did you manage that stress and how did you keep on going to do the next pitch and the next pitch, the next pitch?
I mean, honestly, I think you just almost have to psych yourself up
Hmm.
because what I think, it is like acting a little bit. I mean, obviously you have to be authentic, but you have to gear up for it. And you can't, if you're not in the right mindset, you're probably not going to have a good pitch. And Michelle and I so much believed in what we were doing that it came naturally to us to be like pumped and ready to go. But man, it is exhausting. And I think I didn't the first round, we've done 3 rounds and now we're on our fourth. The first round was in the end exhilarating because we got through it and our lead investor made a decision really fast, which was so exciting. Um, and then as time goes on, though, and it's gotten even harder to raise money. That's when it's just like such a slog. And you really do just, I started to just stop, working on it in like November of last year. I just said, you know what? No one's going to do anything for the next 8 to 10 weeks. So let's just pause, because you
Mhm.
you almost have to just know the psychology that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
And and kind of almost put yourself out there when the time is right and you're in the right mindset versus, thinking you have to just keep pounding through it through, the holidays or the summer months when most investors are in Europe anyway. So
Yeah.
it's
How did you keep cash flowing the company though?
um once we closed on that first round, then we had a base, right?
But
So,
before that, how did you
oh,
cash
so
flow?
hard.
Because
Yeah,
there's
it was
still
so hard.
bills, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Right.
I just kept writing out more check. I kept writing out more personal checks. Um, going out on a limb and not doing anything stupid by any means, but just like, we wanted to have, the right experts work with us on product development. So we knew we had to pay. That was a big piece
Yeah.
of the, cash output.
Yeah.
Was all the product development, building the brand, all the graphic design, all the packaging. Oh my God, packaging is so expensive to create, the graphic design of packaging.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it all, I think we've actually had, as time goes on and the fundraising became more difficult, it's almost more of the cash challenge has come later versus earlier, and because the
Mhm.
fundraising market is so tough.
Well,
It's so
and for
tough.
women, the statistics, it's gone down, especially where there's only female founders in a company.
Yeah,
It was 2.5% of VC dollars, then it went down to 2.2. Last year, it was less than 1%
yeah,
of
terrible.
VC
Yeah,
dollars, even though we're more profitable.
right.
It's crazy. And I think sometimes for me, and I want to hear like if you have
Mhm.
a hype song or something. So I have a hype song right now. And sometimes for me, I'm going into it and I'm going, crap, like I know that the odds are not in my favor,
Yeah,
right? Knowing going in just as a woman with a female
yeah,
co-founder in Mia, that I know that the odds are not there and I have
yeah,
to keep going, but we're the right investment for someone. We're the right
right, right.
investment for someone. And that's like, here's why we're the right investment for
Yeah,
someone. I'm trained in NLP. It's like, okay, so why are we the right investment for someone? Okay, because I've scaled AI before,
yeah,
because Mia
yeah,
sees these patients every day and I just keep like going, going, going. Then I put the hype song on
yeah,
and I go through the deck one more time and I'm like,
yeah,
oh, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, right? To
right.
just um, did anything like, do you have a hype song?
Uh, well, I love Queen. I mean, that's
Yes.
quintessential. It brings me back to my like competitive tennis days when, we'd play,
Mhm.
Queen to kind of get, fired up for our matches. So I'm partial to that. I love the Killers. Um, I don't know that believe me, it's not jazz. It's not, it's not orchestra. It's
No, no,
symphonies.
yeah,
Yeah, I
I
need
hear you,
like,
sister.
yeah, I need like really, testosterone boosting music to get me excited. So,
Yep. I hear you. I had a pitch today and I played We Will Rock You prior to
yeah, yeah,
that. Hmm.
that's exactly the song.
Getting in that peak state. And for
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
listening, that's so huge, whether it's a customer pitch or a,
yeah.
VC pitch. Okay, let's talk about the company and where you're at because there's, you've gone through decades of preparation for this moment. And I
Yeah.
kind of feel like you're on a stage and the spotlight is shining down on you and you're finally here. Like, all the experience in retail, working with some of the most prestigious brands in the
Mhm.
entire world. And now you have this product line that's changing lives. You've
Mhm.
raised several, rounds, and you're like, okay, this is it. This is the
Yeah.
moonshot. So you're on the stage right now, Sally. Tell the entire world about the brand, about the products, where you are, and what's next?
So yeah, I feel like I have to have a microphone, right?
Yes, please do it. Do
I
it.
need to invest in one. So our mission is really to be the first place women turn to for perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. We like to kind of put it all under the umbrella of healthy aging
Yeah.
because not all women understand even what stage of menopause they're in. But think of us as like post fertility all the way through end of life. We want to own that stage of a woman's life, and it's usually 30 to 40% of her life.
Mhm.
And because once you're in menopause until the end. Um, right now, we are all over the counter products. So we designed original products, co created them with doctors and experts that we, as I just said, funded. And we created products that we felt women needed to address the major symptoms of menopause. So it's a combination of skin and body products, supplements, and sexual wellness. And, we launched with 13 products, which at the time was like, a lot of investors were aghast that that was so many products, but we felt like you can't be legitimate if you only have two products. So
Mhm.
we chose to go and really stand for more symptoms and be bold and be in the business. Um, so our products are all, we're very proud that we think they're accessibly priced. We just launched at Walmart, which is the moonshot that you just asked.
Yeah.
We're in over 1,000 stores in Walmart. Effective this week, we launched, and we're in Ulta Beauty. Ulta's been a great partner. And then we're sold on Amazon and womaness.com. But we're more than product. We really have invested in a lot of educational information. So a lot of the doctors we worked with, on product have also helped us with educational information. We're very proud of all of that content in our blog and then community. So really inspiring women at this stage of life to embrace it and be, I would say, looking at it through a positive lens versus, you know, like, ooh, I'm old now. That's the old way of thinking. And women are genuinely excited about this phase of life and what's next for them. So we're here to prop up women, celebrate women, inspire, and give them the support. So we have a private Facebook group called the After Party, so women could just connect with each other. We have
Mhm.
about almost 10,000 women in that group. So yeah, so that's a little bit about our brand. And what's next is obviously continuing to get our marketing word out. Again, that's still a big challenge of, I mean, once women know about us and they try our products, they love it. But it's just finding those women, right? And they're out
Mhm.
there in every block of the US. So it's just figuring out how to reach her and break through, especially now when there's so much noise, on Facebook and Instagram and in the world. So I think, finding unique new ways to reach her. And then, we obviously have product innovation in the pipeline. We're super excited about launching some new products. Um, and, we're working on, bringing in more capital and managing our
Always.
cash, managing our cash. But we're really proud of that we're more than just products, we're here to educate and inspire women.
Sally, you are doing amazing. I'm an investor in two CPG companies, and it's not easy. They're both women owned
Yes.
and very different. One is Une Femme Wine, so not related to what
Okay.
you're doing. And Jen is such an amazing founder like you are. And it isn't easy. It's a tough road to walk. And coming out of CPG on the sales side, you're looking at supply chain, you're looking at
Yeah.
ingredients.
Tariffs.
Like there's no end. And
Yeah.
the fact that you're doing it and charging this mountain on behalf of all women is
Mhm.
amazing. And I want to encourage everyone listening to share Womaness. If you're not a woman, share it with the amazing women in your life. And we know the research shows, and this is what we pivoted at the pause, because the research shows women as young as 30 are going into perimenopause. So
Yeah.
we know that it's not just the 1.1 billion women in the world who will be in menopause by 2030. It's now research is illustrating that it's going to be over 60% of a woman's life, is so huge. So
Yeah.
I love that we get to charge this mountain together
Yeah,
in
I
two
know.
different and collaborative ways. So Sally, thanks again for being on
Thanks,
Real
Susan.
Entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much. It's so fun.
And for everyone listening, go buy some products. Do it. Love you all. And check out other episodes. They're all fantastic. And with that, God bless. Go rock your day. And I will see you in the next episode.